We're going to be talking about some cool things, 5 laws of weight loss. Before we do that, a little bit about me. My name is Alex, for those of you unfamiliar. I'm a fitness coach. I've been doing this for 10 years. More than that, for the past 15, I've been really into fitness because I had my own weight loss transformation journey. Welcome, take a seat. I had my own transformation journey of losing almost 100 pounds over the course of about 15 months. And so that kind of led my journey, my interest into fitness, which then led to my career in fitness, mostly because I had no idea what I wanted to do. I went to the University of Michigan, got my degree in psychology, and after I graduated, still had no idea what I wanted to do. And so friends and family were like, you know what, Alex, you spend all of your time in the gym anyways, you might as well get paid for it. Give this thing a try. Good enough logic for me. Tried it. 10 years later, here we are. But in that time, we have helped tons of people to figure out exactly how they can not only lose weight, but do it sustainably. And one of the things that I like to do is pull my psych background into that to really look at how can we not only shift the behaviors we need to shift, but how do we also shift the mindset related to it? Because that's the biggest challenge I think we're seeing with a lot of people who are attempting new diets or to get on fitness plans is they're sold the short-term solution. You want to get to this end goal. But there's very little discussion of what do you do once you get there? How do you stay there? So we're going to be talking about a lot of that today. Everything we talk about is really over the past 10 years of helping people lose weight, how do we distill the most successful transformations? How do we pull all the lessons that are similar across the board for all of these individuals from all walks of life? What do they all have in common? And that's where we get the 5 laws. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I will preface everything else by saying I was at a wedding last night. I was talking a lot, yelling over a DJ, so my voice is very raspy. I apologize for that. If at any point in time you don't understand something that I say, feel free to yell at me, okay, so that I can yell back and maybe you'll hear it the second time. 5 laws, weight loss, important things. We're going to dive right into it. Law number 1. I also am going to apologize for my handwriting. This one is going to sound familiar to all of us. Our first law is that calories matter. There's the old saying, all roads lead to Rome, right? All diet roads lead to calories. Doesn't matter what the diet is, keto, paleo, DASH, watermelon, cucumber, right? Raw veggies, whatever it is. Every diet tries to manipulate something behavioral in terms of what we choose, how we eat, intermittent fasting, timing, whatever, to make it easier to control this. Now, if we can understand that, that actually makes our life a lot easier. Those of you who were at my last seminar, the Food Freedom Framework, this will sound familiar because that was also the most important thing we talked about when we were conceptualizing our nutrition, because it matters that much. Because if we don't control our calories, nothing else matters. Most of us are familiar with how calories work, yeah? We have to eat less than we burn if we want to lose weight. We have to eat more than we burn if we want to gain weight, and we need those to be equal if we want our weight to stay the same. Okay? So, if we're going to try, again, 5 laws of weight loss and the concepts of weight loss, if we want to lose weight, we have to be eating less than we're burning. There are really only 3 ways to accomplish that. The first, excuse my arrow, we have to move more. We all know that. We got to exercise. We got to move our body. This is in terms of specific exercise, boot camp classes, workouts, spin classes, etc. This is also just in our daily life. Parking further away from the grocery store, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, walking more. Okay? We have to be able to move more. Now, this is a good option. It's important for a lot of reasons other than weight loss, right? Health maintenance. But as our sole driver to control our calories, it's not really a good plan. Because we can very, very quickly out-eat all of the effort we've put in to moving more. That's the most unfair thing about all of this, is it is far easier to eat than it is to exercise. And that gets us into trouble. So our first strategy is we can move more. Important, it's a good strategy, not the best strategy. A better strategy, if we want to control our calories so that we can lose weight, is to eat less. Again, obvious, we all know that. Now, because of all the reasons we just talked about, the unfairness, the fact that we can eat far greater than we can exercise it off, right? It's very hard to outwork a bad diet. It's possible, but it takes a lot of work. Most of us don't have the time for that. So a better strategy, if we weren't even to just ignore movement, if we weren't moving at all, a better strategy would be to control our eating. Why? Because calories matter that much, right? So eating less. But this comes with its own problem, other than all the other health-related reasons that movement is good for us, is that if we just focus on eating less, we're going to be pretty miserable. It's not going to be fun. And food is delicious. So our third, in my opinion, the best strategy, if we want to stand the best chance of controlling our calories, so that we can lose weight effectively, is a combination of moving more and eating less. Again, we all know this. You're like, come on, Alex. Where's the good stuff? But this is really, really important. Because if we do both simultaneously, then we don't have to move as much. We don't have to kill ourselves in the gym all the time. Welcome, guys. Come on in. Take a seat. We don't have to move all the time. We can give our body the proper recovery we need, etc. We don't have to eat so little that we're miserable. We can do it just enough off the edge so that it's sustainable, right? So a good balance of the two. But at the end of the day, even if though we're moving more and eating less, it gives us a little bit more flexibility in our diet, we still have to learn to control the calories. The other exciting thing about this is it means because all diet roads lead to calories, it doesn't actually matter what diet we choose. There is no best diet. In the perspective of which one is going to lead to the most weight loss fundamentally. The only differences in diets are the ones that are easier for you to stick to. So if there's a diet that aligns with your lifestyle, take intermittent fasting, for example. I have clients who are very busy. They find it's far easier to just wake up, hit their work hard, not have to focus on anything else. Afternoon comes around, now they start trickling in their meals as their work they get the big stuff out of the way. And that just works for them, right? And so in that case, intermittent fasting has worked really, really well. I know other people, they go to the gym at 5:30 in the morning, fasting until 1, it's probably going to suck. It's not going to be fun, right? So for them, intermittent fasting is not the best diet. It's something else. And so if we can understand this and we can look at diets through the perspective of how does it help me achieve this, then we can start to not only pick one that might be better for our lifestyle, but we can piece together different aspects of different diets to build our own that works for us behaviorally. What aspects can we integrate into our life? Is it occasionally going low carb if we know there's a lot of snack foods around and we're going to just be munching around, right? Is it generally choosing less processed foods, but also occasionally just opening a pack of Oreos because no explanation required, right? So I was working with a woman, this was maybe back in 2016, we'll call her Grace. She was 53 years old, and she came to me. She was working out 6 days a week in the gym intensely and not seeing any weight loss. None whatsoever. And she came to me thinking she was broken. She's like, I don't get it, Alex. I'm in the gym 6 days a week and nothing is happening. What's the deal? Well, the deal was she wasn't actually paying attention to what she was eating. So all we did is we started to build awareness around how many calories she was consuming so we could figure out what was happening. And in so doing, we were able to see that she was overeating what she needed, right? She weren't paying attention to it. We figured the movement was going to be, right? She was subscribing to this plan. But in the process, 6 days a week, intense workouts, she also didn't feel that great. She was tired, joints were achy, right? So in being able to just understand that we had to focus on this, we put a little bit of more awareness into her eating. We were able to reduce how often she went to the gym. Now she was only going 4 days a week. And she felt better. And she started to actually see the results that she wanted. Right? So if we do a combination of moving more and eating less, and we don't try to push to the extreme of either one, we can do it much more sustainably. It's going to be far easier. And that consistency is going to be key. Okay? But that stands to reason how did we help her build this awareness? And that's going to bring us to law number 2. Law number 2. If anyone has any experience with me, this one's going to look familiar. Oh, wow, I should have shortened this. Excuse my poor handwriting, too, if I didn't already say it.
It's tough for lefties. Especially when your shoulder's broken in the left hand.
That would make it rough. That would make it rough. Law number 2, what gets tracked gets changed. What gets tracked gets changed. In this case, then, if we need to change our calories because they matter and we need to make sure that we're staying within our goal, we got to track them. We got to track them. Now, what I like to do with people is we use like an online food tracker. MyFitnessPal is a very popular one. I'm sure everyone in here knows what that is. That's what we like to use. It tends to be very easy. It's got a huge food database, etc. But regardless of what, there's other apps out there. There's Lose It. There's the Weight Watchers now has their own app. There's tons of ways to track your eating. You could go old school like I did in college, which was just notepads, pen, and paper. Googling it afterwards. But what gets tracked gets changed. Here's why. Around half of our actions every day are just habitual. They're automatic. We don't even think about them. Not only that, but they're habits that we built years ago for one reason or another. And so if we're not finding some way to pull those decisions into the conscious part of our mind, we genuinely don't know what's happening. And so we don't know what to change. Because now we're just being driven in a direction that was determined years ago, and we're not even aware it's happening. Right? It's like being in a self-driving car blindfolded. You don't know what, right? Not only that, but with our food choices, on average, we make 200 food choices every single day. More if we're actually trying to change our eating, right? This, of course, is not just what foods we eat. We're not all eating 200 different foods every day, but it's when we're going to eat it, how much we're going to eat it, how we're going to prepare it, okay? Who we're going to eat it with. All of these things go into our food decisions. And if we don't know what those decisions are, we have a really hard time trying to figure out where we're going wrong. Okay? So when we can actually put those decisions on paper, not only are we going to be more accountable because now we can actually see it. For those of us who have tracked our eating before, you probably know, and it's interesting when I get clients on this, before we even talk about what changes to make, immediately, once people start writing down their eating, they start changing it. It starts looking different because now they have to take ownership over all of their choices. Right? But it also allows us to go back and actually see what's been happening. We get to take the guesswork out. If we're not actually seeing the changes we want, if we're controlling our calories, or so we think, we're eating less and we're still active and we're moving, and by all accounts, the math should be mathin', and the changes are not happening, well, now we can actually look at it. What's going wrong? I'm going to share a personal example for this. Peanut butter fans in here? Anyone else? Everyone, of course. So the family size jar, it's like a 40-ounce jar of peanut butter. There's 32 servings in one of those jars. 32 2-tablespoon servings. Okay? I used to eat one of those a week. Embarrassing, I know. One of my nasty habits with this, and for our peanut butter lovers, many of us may have had a similar experience. Anytime I would kind of go into the kitchen, I would just take a spoon and I would just dip the tip of the spoon in the peanut butter, get a little taste, be on my way, right? It was such a small amount, didn't think anything of it. And as time went on, I'm an active person. At the time, I was trying to lean out a little bit, so my goal was weight loss, but nothing was changing. Now, for one person to eat 32 servings of peanut butter in a week, it raises some flags, right? It raises some flags. But I was tracking my eating. I was putting everything in, so I'd be like, you know what? Let's go to the log. Let's see what's happening. Let's see what's going on. Like, what's the problem? After reviewing my logs for a given week, of those 32 servings, I was only actually tracking 12. The other 20 servings were the bites, the nibbles, the licks, in between, right? Any one of those occasions wouldn't have mattered, but as I developed a habit of every time I went in the kitchen, a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, and it added up over the course of a week. So 20 unaccounted for servings of peanut butter a week. That's over 4,000 calories of invisible calories that I was just not even aware were happening. I thought I was doing everything right. But only because I had a record of what was happening that I could go back and see that discrepancy. Be like, all right, these numbers are not working. Something is amok, right? So if we want something to change, whether it be our eating, our movement, whatever, tracking it is what's going to drive that change. Because then we can actually see what's happening or not happening, and then we can fix it. We all with me on that? It's also just kind of cool to be able to see the progress being made, especially with regards to like when we're tracking our workouts. See yourself get stronger, in better shape, fitter, whatever the case is, right? Another story about tracking. I had a client who lives out in LA. His name is Brian Cooper. He goes by Coop. He's a comedian. He's an actor. He's got a very interesting job with our work together in that he reviews restaurants in Los Angeles. So his job is to eat out. His job is to eat out. And so I could not simply just be like, all right, Coop, you're going to stop eating out. That was just not in the cards. So we started by having him just track his eating to try to better control his calories. And this man was on it. He was in the gym 6 days a week. He was tracking all of his meals. He was being diligent, and it worked for a very long time. And then it stopped working. He plateaued, and he was no longer making progress. Activity levels were still the same, was still diligently tracking. Calories looked like they were where they should have been. And so we went back to the log, and we looked. What's going on? It looked good. Meals were good. He had his filming days where he would eat out, but he would just save portions of it. He would track it diligently. He made sure everything was going on. One of the meals that he really liked having for dinner, salmon and veggies, right? A fillet of salmon and veggies, 500 some calories. Like it looked good. But then we dove a little deeper, and we realized that Coop was falling prey to something called portion distortion. We're all familiar with this, right? The kind of social norms about how much food is a serving will impact what we think intuitively a serving of food is. So we end up eating more, generally. And so this is ultimately what was happening to Coop. And this is going to lead us into an extension of law number 2, which brings us into law number 3. Okay? Which is, what gets measured gets tracked. What gets measured gets tracked. So in Coop's case, he had a phenomenally healthy dinner, salmon, fillet, and veggies. As we were trying to rack our brain on what was going wrong, we said, all right, are you actually paying attention to the portion of the salmon? Let's start there. What is that? He ended up buying a food scale, and he put his one fillet of salmon, which a serving of salmon is 3-4 ounces, that he was tracking it as that on the food scale. 16 ounces was his fillet. I don't know if this man was shopping at Sam's Club or what. 16 ounces was the one fillet of salmon that he was tracking in his log. So now he thought he was doing one serving of that when he was actually doing 4. But even on the log, it looked good. So really what we're talking about with what gets measured gets tracked is the importance of the accuracy of our tracking. We do have to pay attention to that. Because an inaccurate log doesn't do us too much. It does help because it provides a little extra accountability. We have to take a little bit more responsibility and ownership over our choices. All of that is true. But we have to be accurate with our choices. And so that's what happened with Coop. He was not measuring. He was suffering from portion distortion. The serving size said one fillet, and he just assumed that one fillet meant all one fillets. And so he went along with that. But it got us into problems. So if we are going to now have to measure what we're tracking to improve the accuracy, what are some ways we can do that? Well, there's really 3 ways we can do that. 3 ways. And kind of like last time, I'm going to run this on the good, better, best scale. Okay? The first one hand portions. And what I mean by that is there's a guide for portioning things using nothing but your hand. Originally, I wanted to draw the turkey on my hand. And I decided to. So, what they found in various research is, interestingly, the different parts of our hand actually align pretty well with a serving of different food items, right? So there's really 4 key areas. If we took our palm with no fingers, that's about a serving of protein. So think chicken breast, burger patty, pork chop, fish fillet, right? That. If we were going to reach out to have our friend give us some snack, well, let me get some, right? This cupped handful is about a cup of starchy vegetables like rice, chips, pasta, etc. Right? Can I have a cup of rice, please? A fist is about a cup of veggies, or a serving of veggies, rather. And then for fats, things like sauces, oils, peanut butter, avocado, etc. Your thumb is about 2 tablespoons. The way this works so well is because, different sized bodies need different needs, right? I'm 6'2", 200 pounds. I need a lot more food than someone who's yay high. But my hand's also bigger. So the portions kind of correlate pretty well to the individual. So this is a good option. It's a good way if you're in a pinch. Obviously, if you're at a restaurant, you're not going to pull your food scale out and just plop it on the table, right? So this is a good way to just generally eyeball, at the very least, are we falling prey to portion distortion? Are we eating far more than we think that we need, right? Because if you think about a serving of pasta, for example, and then what you get at an Italian restaurant, it's very different. So we'll at least be able to recognize that. So it's good for eyeballing things. I wouldn't rely on this solely as our way of measuring what we're tracking, but it is a good tool in the toolbox. The second way, we're not going to go that, is measuring cups. Measuring cups, again, one we'd probably more likely to use at home. Measuring cups is our better option for more accurate tracking. We've all used measuring cups before. We know how that song and dance works. I will admit measuring cups are a little bit better for things like liquids. Solids get a little murky. Popular one that comes up with people is popcorn, like Alex. There's so much air in there. There's got to be something going on here. So measuring cups is good for that. The other challenge with measuring cups. So I grew up in Ann Arbor, over behind where the now Olga's is, and across from Arborland, a neighborhood called Forest Brook. There was a neighborhood pool there, and every year we'd have a yard sale, neighborhood-wide yard sale. And it was 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, and at the very last 2 hours on Sunday, they had something called a brown bag sale, which we've probably heard of that in other contexts. The brown bag sale was pretty much anything you could fit in a standard-sized grocery paper bag was $5. Didn't matter what you put in there. Didn't matter if it was spilling over the top. If it could fit in that bag and be carried, it was $5. My brothers and I always used to challenge ourselves. We'd come up. My mom was usually working the register, and she would just be like, we don't need any of this.
Yeah, right.
It was the challenge. I bring that up to say, with measuring cups, I was working with someone, and they ate oatmeal, pretty much for breakfast and lunch. He was a pretty big guy. He was in the gym doing some heavy strength training, so he would do 2 servings. So a serving of oatmeal is half a cup. It's about 150 calories. 40 grams if you're looking at the weight on the serving size. He would do 2 servings. So we'd do a cup. We realized he was treating that measuring cup like a brown bag sale. It wasn't a level. It was a heaping. Whatever could fit in there and not fall out before he made it into the container, that was his half a cup. So we had him pull out a food scale, and we had him double check. Does your half a cup match up? Does your half a cup match up to the 40-gram weight? Turns out his half a cup was actually 60 grams, his heaping half a cup. So his one serving was actually 1.5, which means his 2 servings were actually 3. And he would do that twice a day. That was an extra 300 calories in his day that he had no idea was happening. All because he was trying to get his money's worth. Right? So there are ways, measuring cups are a little more accurate than hand portions, but they're not foolproof. We have to be mindful of what we're doing, making sure things are level. Obviously, again, salads get a little tricky with that. How do we correct for that? Which leads us, which I've already alluded to by example a couple of times, to the best option, in my opinion, at least when we have the ability to do so, is a food scale. Every serving size on a nutrition label is going to have a weight in grams. It's very easy. Food scales, they can be bought for 15, 20 bucks on Amazon, at the grocery store. Pretty easy to do. If you're going to get one, I would recommend getting like a AAA battery-powered one instead of the watch battery-powered ones, just so when they die, it's easier to change. But then you can actually weigh everything, and that is by far going to be the most accurate way to measure the food that you are tracking so that we have better control over our calories, so that becomes easier. Right? So hand portions, measuring cups, and the food scale are going to be our best options for accurate logs, because we got to know what's happening, and we got to know what we're changing, and we got to know that we're changing it the way that we think we're changing it. Right? All this is about building more awareness, building more awareness. That is a fantastic question, Bonnie. So the question was, should you weigh your food before cooking it or after cooking it? It actually depends on what you're making. So with meats, I would say, by and large, try to measure it raw. When you're tracking it, most of the time it's listed as uncooked. Because, for the example of proteins, like a chicken breast, for example, it will actually shrink when you cook it. So 4 ounces raw will only be 3 ounces once you cook it. But if you log it after you cooked it, based on 4 ounces, now you're adding extra food in there. Right? Because 4 ounces cooked is more like 5 and some change raw. And again, when you log it, unless you specify cooking, like cooked chicken breast, it will be listed as raw. So you'll actually be consuming a little extra calories. With things like starches, it's actually the opposite. Because when you cook like pasta, it grows in volume. So when you weigh it, it will be heavier cooked than it was dry. So you want to do it dry, right? So in its untouched state, uncooked, is going to be the most accurate way to measure things because it's not impacted by the cooking method yet. Because some things will get bigger when they're cooked, some things will get smaller when they're cooked. And then you got to do this whole song and dance. Question?
No, I'm just reflecting to, yeah. On a tracker that I use, I was putting in, like a chicken patty, and I kept saying, and depending on if you put it in a grilled chicken patty, ground chicken, it was giving you a different amount of calories, and I kept asking the interface, like, well, why is this? And they didn't really have a good answer, but that's what they should have said.
Yes.
Yeah. So the portion size is different once it's been cooked, and so you would love 3 ounces versus whatever.
Yes, exactly. I will say one thing about, and it depends on the food tracker app that you use. MyFitnessPal is a good example of this, so I'll use that. One of the ways that MyFitnessPal has such a variety of food in their database is a lot of the entries are member entered. which we all know if we have any experience with that, can fluctuate, right? You got some people who are meticulous. They're like, I'm going to put every bit of info that I can. And you got other people that are like, nah, it's good enough. As long as it says chicken, it's fine, right? So even if you search chicken in MyFitnessPal, you're going to get 27 different options. So it is important to be able, now I do have MyFitnessPal tutorial online course that I built a long time ago to kind of help people figure out what's the best way to use MyFitnessPal. So if you are considering, maybe you're already tracking or you're considering starting to track and you want to try something like a digital food thing, what I will do is, because I have everyone's email, I'll send out the access to the MyFitnessPal tutorial course so you can get some of those best practices. How do we determine what option to choose? How do we build a recipe if we're making something from scratch? What are some best practices? So we'll get all that. So we've been talking about how basically this is the most important thing with regard to weight loss. All diet roads lead to calories. And this has primarily been ways, really everything we talk about is going to be better ways to control that. But so far it's been around awareness of our eating. Our fourth law transitioned us into the role of environment. Very important, right? So law number 4 is that access is stronger than willpower. Access is stronger than willpower. Many of our cravings are simply because something is next to us. Right? So there is a difference between environments we can control and ones that we can't, and we'll talk about that here in a moment. But before that, an important note on willpower. How many of us have ever thought, and you don't have to raise your hand or anything, but just reflect. How many of us have ever thought to ourselves that we need more willpower if we really want to achieve our goals? The challenge with that, as many of us may or may not know, is that this is a finite resource. Kind of like a muscle. It can get a little bit stronger. I can easily hold 2-pound dumbbells like this, but after about 90 seconds, and I'm going to be dying. Right? So things wear out. And the reality of willpower is it doesn't matter who you are. Nobody has willpower after 6 p.m. Because every time we make a decision, we are exerting our willpower. What to wear that day, what route to take to work, what to put in our coffee. All of that slowly chips away at our willpower. That's why most of us, if any of us struggle with snacking, it's almost unanimously at night. Because at that point, our willpower has been so drained from the day that we have no other chaperones hovering around to make sure that we're not doing things we don't want to be doing. Okay? Nobody has willpower after 6 p.m. So, access being stronger than willpower, if we are at the end of the day with very little willpower left and we're in an environment where all of the tempting treats are around us, we are setting ourselves up for failure. Okay? A good rule of thumb that I'll have for willpower, last note on this, is I would approach it as you really have enough willpower, given everything else going on in your day, to sway one good decision. Right? That's all I would rely on. One good decision. It's not always one that you opt into, by the way. Right? You get to work, something's messed up, someone's relying on you to fix it, you got to make a quick decision, boom, done, it's gone, taken from you. Right? So if we want a better chance at controlling this, without having to try to police ourselves so much, we have to control our access to it. Obviously, again, I alluded to, there are environments we can control. Our car, our office area, our home in some cases, especially if we live alone. If we don't, obviously there's some limitations to that. So in those environments we can control, the easiest way to not fall prey to those things is to not have them there. If we get rid of them, we can't eat what's not there. Personally, one way that I overcome this because I love a good snack in front of the TV on the couch. It's not a good habit. Is I will not stock in my home. Obviously, I don't have any children, so this becomes easier. I try not to stock any food that doesn't require at least some level of preparation. Because then when I'm sitting on the couch and suddenly I get a craving for something, I have to ask myself, Alex, do you want it badly enough to go cook it? The answer is almost always no. But by trying to build our environment, the ones that we can control, to reflect the changes we want to make, getting rid of the snack foods, the junk foods, getting it out of the house or out of the vicinity so we don't have access to it, it's going to drastically increase the chances that you don't indulge in it. Right? This is one of the fundamental truths to habit change, is if we want to do something differently, we have to make that behavior easier. If we want to stop doing something, we have to make that behavior far more inconvenient. If the thing we want to do is easier than the thing we want to stop doing, we're more likely to do the thing we want to do. Right? So if you have a pack of Oreos in the house, and the only healthy choice you have is to go cook a chicken breast and some veggies on the stove, which one of those is easier? No brainer, right? But that's only for environments that we can control. What about the ones we can't? Our parents' house, conference rooms, friend's house. What do we do in those situations? We're at a dinner party. We're not in control of what's being served. What do we do then? Right? One strategy I have, particularly, so one of the biggest challenges that people face when I work with them is, tends to be at the office. Free food, donuts, right? It's really hard to say no to free food.
I hate going back to the office one for this reason. My willpower kind of gets lost there. I see food and then I eat.
Yeah, candy jars, junk food, whatever. It's just there. It's like, we know you hate coming to the office, but pizza. So one of the strategies I like to use, one of the reasons it's so hard to deny the free food when it's in the office is because there's no ownership of that food. It is free for anyone to take. So to contrast that and to drive that point home, there's a particular social norm when you're with other people, especially at the office. If you go into the break room at work where the refrigerator is and you open that up and one of your coworkers has a lunch packed, it's very high chances you are not going to eat that. Right? Because it belongs to somebody else. It's not your food. When there's free food, donuts on the table, it doesn't belong to anybody, so it can belong to me. It needs someone to take ownership. So one, it's going to sound very strange, but it does actually work very well. If you're in that situation where there's food present, this also works at parties. If there's an hors d'oeuvre tray, a charcuterie board on the table, and you're trying not to pick at it, if there's any opportunity or any moment where there's free food available, and you're battling yourself internally not to grab some, if you can artificially assign ownership to somebody else who's there, or maybe even not there. And the more specific you get in your mind by name, the better this works. Okay? So if I'm at the office and there's a box of donuts, and there's my favorite sour cream donut, glazed right there. So good. So good. And now I'm like, it's free. I should just grab it. But instead, if I'm like, you know what? That donut belongs to John. John also likes sour cream donuts. He's going to really enjoy this. Leave it for him. Right? Now, that donut belongs to John. It's not my donut anymore. And my craving for that goes down. So all we're uniquely doing here is we're just leveraging the social norm of not eating other people's stuff. And we're just assigning different things to people. And if you try this, next time you're in that environment, try it. And you will notice that your desire for it starts to drop. Okay? So when we're in an environment that we don't control, and there's those temptations, that's a strategy I like to give people. Try that, at least until you can remove yourself from that situation. But our best strategy, if we're in an environment that we can control, is to get rid of the stuff that causes us problems. Because if it's not there, we cannot eat it. Right? Access is stronger than willpower. The last law, speaking of being at parties and social events, probably one that everyone in here has struggled with at some point. Food pushers? Anyone? Okay. Law number 5 is learn how to say no to food pushers, enablers, and saboteurs. When we start a fitness journey, we will all come across this. It's a very strange phenomenon. It's usually the people closest to us, the people who should be most supportive of our healthy changes, are often the ones pushing the food the hardest in the opposite direction. And there's actually a very interesting reason that this happens, and it's something called the black sheep effect. We are social creatures. We're in groups. And we have I hate to use the term clique, but we have our in-group. We have our group of friends. We have our family. We have the people that are in our group. And what happens when we get into groups is there are implicit rules for how that group behaves. The example I always like to use of this, for those of us who have seen the classic movie Mean Girls, on Wednesdays we wear pink. Right? That group, their rule was on Wednesdays they wear a certain color. They wear pink. So when it comes to food, our groups have implicit rules for the types of activities we do together, the foods we eat when we're around each other, our alcohol consumption habits. All of these things are implicit to the group rules. Now, the black sheep effect is this. Members of the group who break the rules are seen as worse off than people outside of the group who break the rules. So people not in our group who don't follow our rules will look at them more favorably than someone in our group who breaks the rules. So if you're in the Mean Girl clique and one of your best friends in the group is not wearing pink on Wednesday, what the heck? What are you doing? If your classmate from chemistry is not wearing pink, but they're not one of your friends, you're not mad at them for not wearing pink. They're not in the group. You don't care what they do. Right? So when we're in our group that has its own food rules and we start to change the way we eat, we tend to break some of those food rules. If your group of friends really likes to indulge in alcohol, wine night, whiskey, whatever, and suddenly you're saying no to the alcohol, now we got a problem. What's the deal? This isn't what we do here, right? So when people are pushing food, when you've said no, it's usually because of that. It's because, and they don't always know why they're doing it either. They just know something's off, right? This is how this group behaves, and now you're changing the way you behave, and you're now breaking the group rules. This is also why I recommend, particularly for people getting into new romantic relationships, to try to find ways other than going out to eat in the early stages. Because this happens a lot with significant others as well. When you start a relationship by going out to eat, you write that into the rule book of how you guys behave together. And what that actually does is it becomes a barometer for the health of the relationship. So I see this all the time when someone comes to me and they start changing their eating habits. They start wanting to eat out less or eat junk food less. And suddenly their partner, the person who should be most supportive, is the one getting a little upset. They're trying to push a little bit more. They're trying to get them to go out to eat more. And it's usually because the barometer was how often they went out to eat. And now this person doesn't want to eat out anymore. It's not because they don't want them to be healthy. Of course, that's not true. It's because, are we okay? We good? Right? And it just happens automatically because we tend to go out to eat a lot when we're in it. Right? It's the version of that black sheep effect. It's now you're breaking the rules of that implicit agreement. So just as an aside, I recommend people try to find other ways to bond with each other other than food. So you establish early that that's not something that is like a big thing. So it gives you a little more flexibility, right? So if we're now at a party and we're breaking all the rules, we're being a rebel, but now people are pushing food at us, what can we do about that? Okay? One thing I will do along with that My Fitness Pal course is I will send out a script of different things you can do for food pushers. You can literally use them verbatim to get people to push food on you less. And I'm going to share 3 of them with you today. The first strategy for getting rid of food pushers that I like to use is something called decline and deflect. We'll use the example of we're at a birthday party and there's cake and the host is offering you cake. And you don't really want it. If you just say no, oh, come on, Alex, you got to try it. It's so good. Oh, you're on a diet? Oh, just one day. It's fine. Decline and deflect is simply you're going to say no, and then you're going to ask them a question about something else. Okay. Oh, no thanks. I'm not really in the mood for cake right now, but I want to hear how the work project go this week. Right? Or, oh, how's your vacation planning going? Where are you guys off to next? And what that does is it gets you away from the topic of food. You can politely decline, move it somewhere else. People are usually more than happy to oblige with that. Also, you'll notice if you start to ask questions about something else and they keep bringing it back to food, they're going to start to feel a little weird. They're like, why do I want them to have this cake so badly? That's odd, right? Causes a little self-reflection. So that's one strategy we can use, decline and deflect. The other one I like to use, one of my personal favorites, is deferring it for later. Deferring it for later. So we're not outright saying no. I'm at this birthday party. Someone's like, cake, come on. Instead, I might be like, you know what? You're right. It looks delicious. I tell you what, I'm going to make sure I grab a piece before I leave today. Okay? Because all they really want is they want you to have a good time. And if you're not having a good time, they're afraid they won't have a good time. So as long as they think you're having a good time, they're good. So by putting it off to an ambiguous future, you're saying you will have some, you're just not sure when, at some point. That's enough for them to be like, oh, okay, cool. They'll try some. I don't have to worry about it anymore. And they'll leave it alone. Okay, so we can defer for later is another strategy. And then the third strategy I like to use is called incognito mode. Here's what incognito mode is. You're at a party. Say there's a lot of people at this party. There's food, beverage, etc., birthday cake. If you have nothing in your hands, that's a no-no. Can I get you a drink? Try some food? Come on, get something. And so incognito mode is simply if you keep something, anything in your hands, a cup of water even, if you just keep something in your hands, from afar, when people see you, they're going to see you have something in your hands, and they're going to assume that you're engaging in the beverages, the food, whatever, and they will not push it on you. Because it will appear as if you're enjoying all of the things that are offered. Even if it's just a cup of water. So if you keep, incognito mode is simply, if you keep something in your hands, people will push things on you less. Okay. So we had the decline and deflect, defer for later, and incognito mode. These are just 3 of a number of food strategies, food pusher strategies that I'll send everyone the scripts for at the end of the seminar today. But at the end of the day, those are all just strategies to try to reduce the amount of food people push on us, food, beverages, etc. At the end of the day, though, we do have to be able to stand our ground and say no. The reality is that at the end of the day, if you really turn down things, no one is really going to be that upset with you. Unless that person sucks. In which case, the food is the least of their problems. Right? But we need to be able to learn how to say no. Okay? These 5 things. Calories matter. We need to learn how to control them. Best way we can control them is to track them, because what gets tracked gets changed. But if we want to ensure that's going to work to our advantage, we want to make sure it's accurate tracking. So we should measure things either with our hand portions, our measuring cups, and or our food scale, or ideally a combination of all 3. We want to design our environment, or at least the ones that we can control, to support the goals that we want, because access is always going to be stronger than our willpower. And for the environments we can't control, leveraging some other strategies like assigning ownership to at least reduce our cravings in that situation. and being able to make sure that we are ultimately deciding what goes in our body and learning how to manage, navigate, and avoid food pushers so that we stand a better chance at controlling our calories. Because if we succumb to food pushers, they now determine where our calories are. We're giving that control to them. These are the 5 most common denominating traits of the most successful weight loss transformations that I've seen over the past 10 years. Everyone who was successful did all 5 of these things to some degree. It was the only common thing across all lifestyles, all age brackets, all circumstances. Kids, no kids, were these 5 things. So for those of you who are here for the Food Freedom Framework, we talked about the nutrition side of things. Like how do you navigate the actual food choices? These are the behavioral things that we need to do. If we combine the 2 of those, and so I know not everyone was here for that last seminar. I will also send the recording of that out for anyone who wasn't here, so you guys can see that, the Food Freedom Framework, which is how we conceptualize how do we even approach changing our nutrition. How do we know when do we eat protein, when do we eat carbs, fats, etc. But if we combine those with these 5 behavioral changes, now we're set up for success. We can lose weight easier, faster, and more sustainably. And we can maintain it. Five laws of weight loss. With that, questions? Not yet answered.
In the last seminar, you taught us how to figure out how many calories we should have.
Yes.
Is it necessary to actually meet, like if say you're supposed to have 1,500 calories a day, is it actually necessary to hit 1,500 or is it 15 or less?
Good question. So if our goal is weight loss, that's the context that we're thinking about this, and we have a specific calorie goal, we'll say 1,500. 1,500 calories a day is our goal to still see the weight loss. Do we need to get at 15 every day? The reality of that, weight loss being our goal, is what I recommend is treat that as the upper limit. Now, what determines if you go less than that should be driven strictly by our appetite. If you're not hungry at 1,300, and it's the end of the day, don't feel pressured to force 200 extra calories. But when I say driven by appetite, I also would not recommend trying to go below that. That's what a lot of trap people fall into, is we know we have to eat less than we burn to lose weight, so it stands to reason intuitively if we eat even less, it'll just happen faster. But that's what leads to the miserable part when we talked about if we just eat less, eventually we get miserable. So yes, I would treat it as our calorie goal for weight loss is our upper limit. We definitely don't want to go above that. If we're satisfied at some point below that on a particular day, and it will vary from day to day, right? Then just go short one day. Yeah, no big deal. Yeah. One more caveat to that is if we find there's a day or maybe a series of days where it's very low, whether driven by appetite or not, 600 calories, 700 calories, then I would take a closer look. What else is going on that's causing that? Is it stress? Is it something else? Right? Because we do want to make sure we're getting enough to actually nourish our bodies. Because that's the only way to make this sustainable so that we can stick with it long enough to actually get to our goal and to get there and not feel miserable. Because the other problem is when we get there and we feel miserable, we'll go back the other way real quick. Make sense, buddy?
Yeah.
Cool. Other questions?
Probably you might have covered this in the previous seminar. I didn't attend. So the question is, say I work out on a day, say 4 days a week. The other 3 days I don't work out. So what should be my protein intake on the days I work out, on the days I don't work out? Should it differ or should it be the same?
Good question. Good question. So for protein in particular, I would leave it exactly the same every day. Makes life easy. Now, in terms of how much protein you eat, I like to use a range. I don't like to use hard targets. For those of you who were at the last seminar, this will sound familiar. There's 2 ways you can determine your range of protein. The first is 1 gram of protein per pound of your ideal body weight. So whatever you would like to end at. Okay? That will be a certain number in grams. That's how many grams of protein we want to try to attempt. That's one end of the range. The other end is 30% of your total calories. So how we find that out very quickly is there are 4 calories per gram of protein. I know it's turning into a math class real quick. So there's 4 calories per gram of protein. So if we have 1,500 calories is our goal, right? If we and we want 30% to be protein, if we multiply 1,500 by 0.3, whatever that number that is, and then we divide that by 4, that's going to get us our grams. Now, if we take this number and the 1 gram per pound of our ideal body weight, that's our range. Okay? The ideal body weight is the more stable number. This one can change depending on your calorie goal, so it will either go above or below that. And then as long as you're in that window, golden. And I would just do that every day. Okay.
So, and you may have covered this in the other one, or maybe it'll be in the next one.
Ooh. Bonnie, no. Next one.
Is ideal body weight. So I've always subscribed to a number. And I don't think that my body over the years has agreed. I've been fighting that, right? Like I had this idea that I should weigh 110 pounds.
Yeah.
My whole life, I was like 110 pounds. But that was, when I look at pictures, I was like, what the heck was I thinking?
Yeah.
And so how does one determine kind of this ideal body weight?
Yes.
Healthy ideal body weight?
That's a fantastic question. How are we going to determine our ideal body weight? And the reality is it's actually pretty hard to do. It's going to be very individualistic to a degree because there are so many variables at play, right? There's obviously like what's considered a healthy body weight. And really, I would not lean into a healthy body weight being a specific number that based on your height, weight, whatever, like your age, this is what you should weigh, because that can vary so drastically. Instead, when I talk about a healthy body weight, I mean for all other health metrics. Is our blood pressure good? Is our cholesterol level good? Are our triglycerides down? If our blood work is good and we feel good, healthy body weight. Now the other end of that is, what do we feel good at? Mentally, visually, etc. Obviously, this can also get in its own realm of, but kind of the intersection of those two. What makes us physically healthy, and where do we mentally feel good at? And that too, I'm glad you bring it up, is seldom ever a hard target number. Our weight fluctuates every day. So I like to, again, ranges. What's a range of maybe this weight plus or minus 3 or 4 pounds, 5 pounds, whatever. As long as we're in that window, right? So if you notice you're starting to teeter on the upper end of that, okay, maybe it's time to tighten things up for a little while. Maybe a little less eating out for a couple weeks, just, keep things in check. If we're on the low end, Saturday, let's go have some fun. Right? But this is how we make it sustainable, right? We can kind of alter and keep tabs on things and just kind of make subtle changes that will keep us in this range so we don't have to go to one extreme or the other. Does that help? But it does get a little messy and complicated because no one can really answer like when you feel good.
But I think the health factors, like what are the other things, and then
Right.
it's not so much about the number.
Exactly.
It's about are you healthy?
Yeah. The interesting thing about specific body weight numbers, and most people who have ever had a weight loss goal have done this before, is we assume that weighing a certain number will make us feel a certain way. And then something interesting happens, one of two things. Either we hit that number and we don't feel the way we expected, and now the tendency is just, I got to go even further, right? Because it was something other than the number we were looking for. Or we get to the point where we feel the way we wanted to feel. We don't have aches and pains. We feel confident. We feel all the things we were expecting, but we haven't gotten to the number yet. And now we're like, whoa, no, I have to go there. And so people can tend to kill themselves trying to get to that number when they already achieved what they set out for. It just wasn't what they were expecting, number-wise, right? So being able to understand that there's usually, especially if there's like a specific number in lights that's in our mind, this is what we want to weigh. It's usually because there's a feeling associated with that number. We feel like we'll look a certain way, we'll feel a certain confidence, there's something attached to that. And that's good, that's great, that's normal, but it's important to understand what those other things are that we're after so that we can measure those things outside of the number. Right? Because if you get the confidence, you feel good, you like buying clothes again, diet's in check, still can have some fun, and you're 5 pounds heavier than what your number was, and blood work's good, who cares? You've won. You know, you've gotten there. No need to put the extra work in for no reason, right? So, other questions? Anything?
Tracker apps. Which ones do you recommend?
Tracker apps. Which ones do I recommend? So, for the longest time, I was still saying my number one is MyFitnessPal for free apps. MyFitnessPal. Yes. MyFitnessPal. It's been around the longest. It's got the most extensive database. They have recently started putting some of the features behind paywalls, which is a major drag because I'm all for free nutrition apps. But in terms of free ones, that's still a really good one. I think Lose It is still free. You mentioned you were tracking it. What do you use?
I use Noom. But
Okay, you're on Noom.
There's a free, there's like a couple aspects that are free.
Yeah.
But you have to pay to open up more.
So a lot of food. So the main thing when you think about a food tracker is some of the features, yes. Like it's nice to have a barcode scanner where you can just like zap a barcode and it pops up. MyFitnessPal had that and then they just put it behind a paywall. But the other one is the extensiveness of their food database. Because you obviously don't want to be tracking things and it's like, this doesn't exist. Now I got to enter it all, right? So MyFitnessPal is still my preferred. When we're talking about paid apps, there's one that I've become a really big fan of called Macro Factor. Macro Factor. There's two reasons why I really like this one. It is pretty cheap. It's like $7 a month instead of MyFitnessPal's premium. I think it's $15 a month or something like that. It's got all of the food items in Macro Factor, not to sound like a sponsored ad, are nutritionist verified, so they don't let members enter things. I should say that you as a user can enter your own items, but it will not be added to a larger database. Right? So all the larger database items are nutritionist verified. It's got the barcode scanner, everything. It's got a talk to thing. You can like say what you're eating and it will do it. The thing I like most about Macro Factor, especially for weight loss, is like all nutrition apps, you can enter your weight and it will keep track of that. But they actually use algorithms because our weight fluctuates. They'll use algorithms to smooth out the curve. So here's an example. On MyFitnessPal, you enter your weight one day. Say I entered 200 pounds. Say I have a weekend of wedding and dinners and cocktails with friends and catching up with people, and I go back home and I'm 205. If I put that in MyFitnessPal, the graph is just going to be 200, 205. Right? And if we're not aware of that, sometimes I can get in our head, like, oh, damn, I got to like work extra hard now. What Macro Factor does is it uses the algorithm to be like, okay, you were 200, your next input was 205. We know that you didn't eat because there's 3,500 calories in a pound. We know you didn't eat 15,000 calories. I mean, hopefully not, at least not from what you've tracked. So, doing math, boobity beep, whatever, it'll be like, okay, your scale weight's 205, but your actual weight's probably like 200.3. So it kind of smooths it out. So you get to see what's the actual weight that you have and then what are the fluctuations. So you can separate that. And it doesn't mess with your head so much. Right? So that's one of the reasons I like that app so much. As for the other things. But honestly, if you went to the App Store and you type in like food tracker, macro tracker, nutrition log, whatever, there's a lot of really good ones out there. So as long as it's easy to use and as long as it's accurate in the sense of, the best way to determine accuracy is there's some easily searchable foods on Google, like chicken breast, for example. If you search the nutrition on chicken breast, it's pretty standard. It's like 120 calories for 4 ounces. If you compare that to a chicken breast item in one of the food trackers, if they're the same, that's a green check. They're doing something good. If you get 8 million different options and they're like ranging from 210 calories to 30 calories, now you're like, wait a second. There's something going on here. Something fishy. Right? But there are tons of grabs. So my personal recommendations, free, MyFitnessPal, numero uno, paid, Macro Factor. Questions? Other questions? Comments? Concerns? Happenings? Things of interest?
How do you get how many calories?
Good question. How do we get how many calories? There's really 2 steps to this. One, and I will send it out in the email. there are essentially, to start our calorie goal, is essentially an equation that we run. It takes in your age, your weight, your height, your activity levels, and it factors that in to figure out, okay, based on that, how many calories do you burn in a day? And then from that, we subtract or add based on what our goal is. If we want to lose weight, we'll subtract a modest amount, 250, 500 calories from that. And that becomes our goal. So step one is to run the numbers, and what I'll send out is a link to that calculator. So you can enter all your stats, get your goal. So that's going to be your starting point. After that, it becomes trial and error. I'm following that goal, and I recommend giving that goal 2 weeks. Am I tracking it? Am I measuring it? Is it accurate? Am I seeing the changes that I want? If the answer is yes, perfect. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Keep going. If the answer is no, well, the first thing we got to do, are we actually tracking? Are we actually doing it accurately? Is that all? Is the math mathin'? If the math is mathin', and we're still not seeing the changes from that calorie goal, then we know, okay, that's probably a little too high. Now we need to reduce it a little bit. Okay? So we kind of just have to keep our pulse as we're following that number that we got from the equation. Are we seeing the changes that we want? If the answer is yes, we keep going. If the answer is no, then we change it a little bit. And then it's just pretty much that process forever.
So we calculate initially, and then say in a month I lost 2 pounds, then I have to recalculate, right? Because my calorie might change.
So you can do that. You can do that.
How often should we calculate?
I honestly would recommend not touching it until you stop seeing progress.
Oh, okay.
It's just, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You out of here? Thank you. It's just, I subscribe to, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Just ride it out. Once it stops working, then rerun the numbers, or then honestly, I don't think I've ever replugged in the equation twice, because after you get the first number, from there you just observe what's happening, and then you can make changes. And then at that point, your observations are going to be the best thing.
Okay.
Because again, the equations are never perfect. So in that case, I would rather rely on what we're actually observing is happening to influence the changes, instead of something else now bringing the equation back in when it has no context to give us direction when we have more of the context ourselves. Right?
So the thing is, but calorie number is based on the weight and everything, right? Say you lost like 10 pounds. So then the calorie that I should be eating should be different, right?
Yes. So at the most fundamental level, yes. If a certain number of calories causes you, and this is one reason why we don't want to go too low too soon as well. I don't know why I'm pointing at the board. There's nothing on the board relevant. As we weigh less, our body doesn't require as much energy to move around, unless we're moving more in exercise. So when people here's a phenomenon, an example to show this. Sometimes I have people who are struggling to lose weight. I'll have them eat a little more. And that's always in mind. They're like, whoa, my guy. I don't know about that. Just trust me, try it. And what happens is when they start eating more, it's not that anything is like changing in their body, other than if they've been under eating so long that they're just tired, they're fatigued. The sneaky thing about not eating enough is not so much our workouts, it's everything else. We'll fidget less, we'll sit on the couch more, we'll be less motivated to go for a walk or to actually get up out of our chair during the day. And all of those calories add up. So often what happens when someone eats a little more and they lose weight, it's because now their body has a little bit more energy, and now they can actually do more. So they're moving more throughout the day, and they're pushing harder in their workouts. And so the calories they're burning ends up being higher than the increase in calories, and then they're losing. So there are examples when it's not so direct, what we eat and what we burn. And so with the calories, yes, when people start too low, at some point their metabolism adapts, as you're alluding to. We weigh less, we need less, why aren't we eating less? And that will happen at some point. But it doesn't happen as quickly, because as we lose a little bit of weight, often we're moving more, and that's covering the difference, so we don't have to drop the calories so quickly.
Oh.
Right? And so I would rather wait until it's like we know it's not working anymore. Because if we get, 1,200 calories, we're not going below that. That's just not good for health reasons. So if we were to jump to 1,200 calories and then our body adjusts, because our body doesn't want to lose weight. That's the whole song and dance we're doing. It's our body doesn't want to lose weight, but we're like, no, we're gonna do it anyways. So we gotta kind of dance around it and be like, no, we're actually like we're not starving ourselves. We're just eating a little less. It's cool, right? And so in so doing, if we jump right to 1,200 calories and our body starts to adapt, we get more fatigued, we get more lethargic. We're not moving as much, and now our maintenance level becomes 1,200 calories. We don't have anywhere else to go. We can't drop our calories anymore. So I always recommend when it comes to calories, we want to eat the most that we can while still losing weight. It will minimize misery. It will also maximize the room we have when we hit a plateau and we're truly, no matter how much extra we're moving, we are not losing weight at that calories and we do have to change it. Now we have room where we can drop it a little bit. And then we repeat the process. Are we seeing the changes? We are. We ride it out. Once it stops, drop it a little more. Repeat, rinse and repeat until we get to our goal. And then there's the whole process of slowly adding calories back, but that's a whole nother seminar. Maybe the next one. Other questions, comments, concerns, evidence? Well, I'm so glad you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for coming out this Saturday morning. I will make sure I send all those things out, the MyFitnessPal course, the food scripts. I will send out the calorie calculator, and I'll send out the Food Freedom Framework recording from the last seminar for those who missed that. And, of course, I'll keep you updated on future seminars when I come back to Ann Arbor.
Thank you.
Otherwise, if you need anything else, let me know. Watch out for those emails. But again, thank you guys for coming. Appreciate it.